This is a defamation case. It's a case about how devastating words can be when they are false and uttered publicly.
I think most actors' dream is to be able to do a period piece film, but I got to do an every period piece film.
In a lot of ways, the growing controversy around Blake Lively is making people think back to the chaos that once surrounded Amber Heard. Both actresses originally made names for themselves as poised, self-assured figures in the public eye. Then each one ended up in legal battles that shook up their public image in major ways. Of course, the details of what happened to each of them aren't exactly the same, but there are plenty of shared themes, like how the public first felt sympathy and then grew suspicious, how leaked text messages hit the news, and how their lawyers ended up stepping away. All of this has led folks to notice the surprising similarities in how two admired celebrities became sources of controversy. Those who kept up with Amber Heard's public legal battles can't help but see a parallel. A once-beloved actress caught in an ever-growing swirl of stories, some of which cast serious doubts on her initial version of events. For Blake, the trouble started with a project that seemed like it would be a hit. She was cast in a movie adaptation of a popular novel called It Ends With Us. This film was co-written and directed by Justin Baldoni, who also planned to star in it. The movie aimed to be an emotional deep dive into relationships and complicated life changes. At first, everything looked promising. Blake's star power and friendly public image seemed like a perfect fit for Justin's heartfelt approach to storytelling. A lot of fans were super excited, seeing them as a dream team that would create something really moving. It reminded some people of how Amber Heard, early in her career, also seemed to seamlessly blend into big projects, with fans buzzing about the possibilities. But almost as soon as production kicked off, rumblings of conflict started to emerge. Word spread that Blake was getting frustrated with Justin's level of control. Since he wasn't just directing, but also co-writing and starring, he naturally had a lot of creative sway over the film's direction. Meanwhile, rumors circulated that there were arguments over things like script revisions, how the press was handled, and other production choices. Right away, this made people recall Amber Heard's situation when she went public with claims that completely altered how everyone viewed her. The pattern of woman says she's been mistreated, then conflicting information appears, is now playing out again with Blake. She says Justin was deliberately leaking negative tidbits to tabloid sites to harm her reputation. Many fans were inclined to believe her at first, especially since female leads often face extra scrutiny and can be misrepresented in the media. However, support for Blake started to waver once screenshots of texts showed up that told a different side of the story. These messages supposedly showed Blake referencing her husband, Ryan Reynolds, along with other powerful people, calling them her dragons, implying she could use those connections to control how post-production edits, promo materials, or public perception might go. This storyline felt oddly reminiscent of other Hollywood controversies.
We always tease each other. He was, after I gave birth, he was like, oh my gosh, if I lost you and I, went to the park with our 3 kids, I mean, think of the ladies I can. Like, this is a horrible thing to say. And he's like, I mean, I've got a long list. And I was like, oh, really? Because I just have one on my list. I didn't. I don't have anyone on my list.
And then it wasn't funny anymore.
No, it's so much more of a burn. He's like, wait, who? And I was like, okay, think of someone, think of someone. Bob Newhart, I don't know.
Even Amber Heard's, where the public's initial belief in someone's story was undermined by a second wave of evidence. In Blake's case, these leaked messages painted her less as a victim and more like someone who knew exactly how to work her behind-the-scenes power. In the movie business, even small disputes can blow up once the press and social media get hold of them. We all saw this during Amber Heard's ordeal. Every interview she gave was scrutinized, and every tiny moment got spun into a scandal. The same pattern hit Blake. Some interview clips circulated where she was offering words of praise about Justin, but it came off as awkward, and she would abruptly change the subject. This fueled speculation that bigger problems were lurking under the surface. Then came the truly defining moment. Blake filed legal papers complaining about various on-set issues, like how close contact scenes were handled and how Justin supposedly commented on her postpartum appearance in a way she felt was insulting. If what Blake said was true, that would definitely put Justin in a negative light, much like claims in the past have damaged other careers. Just like with the Amber Heard drama, however, counterclaims popped up just as quickly. Justin's team put out extended text messages that contradicted Blake's stories, particularly the claim that Justin entered her trailer without being asked in. While Blake's text made it sound like he just barged in, the full messages apparently showed she invited him in, joking around. the once solid storyline started crumbling, and the confusion that followed reminded everyone how easily a messy back and forth with evidence can turn a basic argument into a full-blown public spectacle. This was exactly what happened with Amber Heard, too, when a fresh batch of evidence made people realize the situation was far more complicated than the first headlines made it seem. But in Blake's saga, one development rose above all others. Her own lawyer quit. This attorney, who was known for taking on high-profile Hollywood clients, didn't just quietly bow out. He made a public statement questioning Blake's credibility. A lot of people started drawing parallels to other times when a big star's lawyer left the case and how that can basically torpedo the star's argument. It also reminded people of Amber Heard's downfall, where once her own team started to lose faith, it seemed like the floodgates opened. Generally, a lawyer's job is to protect their client by making deals and working behind the scenes to avoid bad press. So when an attorney not only steps away but hints that the client's story might not line up with the facts, it's like a huge alarm bell. Whether we're talking about Amber Heard back then or Blake Lively now, having your own lawyer publicly say, "I don't believe you," is a massive red flag that everyone notices. Suddenly, the wave of sympathy that had been carrying Blake along came to a halt. Fans who'd been all in on her side were now stuck weighing the lawyer's comments against all the good things they'd believed about Blake before. This about face in the court of public opinion is exactly what happened with Amber Heard too, when contradictory testimonies and online leaks made it tougher for anyone to feel fully confident in her claims. People who rushed to defend Blake started asking if they'd been duped by a carefully orchestrated campaign, especially as more messages and behind-the-scenes stories came out that contradicted her statements.
And we went into the audition, and he signed in, and then the casting director came out and said, "Blake?" And Eric said, "Yep, that's her." And I just thought I was gonna die. And she said, "We don't have you on our call sheet." And he said, "Oh," and he put his agency's name. And so I auditioned, and I didn't know what to say in that moment. I was 16, and my brother had just written my name on a piece of paper, and they were looking at me, so I walked in the room and did the audition.
At this stage, Justin's way of handling things seemed to put him in a strong position. He stayed transparent. His team released full, unedited records of their conversations, invited outside experts to look at them, and avoided personal attacks on Blake. People who remembered the Heard situation pointed out that while, in that case, information sometimes came out in a more combative style, there was a similar overall strategy of letting the evidence speak for itself. Once again, a big narrative of he said, she said, boiled down to a simpler concept. If you can show the entire context that undermines the central accusations against you, folks are going to start questioning the accuser's motives. It's a strategy that works well with audiences looking for authenticity in a sea of Hollywood rumor and gossip. As things settled down a bit, more people involved in the film started sharing what they saw, giving little insights into Blake's behavior on set. One production assistant said Blake kept pushing for more takes under the guise of being creative, but then later turned around and used those same scenarios as proof that the production didn't support her. Another staff member mentioned Blake could be super friendly one day and then switch to harsh criticism the next, creating a tense vibe for everyone else. These back-and-forth reports sounded a lot like what happened during Amber Heard's fiasco, where co-workers and acquaintances described a person whose attitude swung between charm and hostility. Both times, onlookers were left trying to piece together which events were real causes for concern and which might have been normal on-set tensions, blown out of proportion for strategic reasons. Another angle adding fuel to the fire was Blake's husband, Ryan Reynolds, and how he fit into all this. Just like people who either stood by or drifted away from Amber Heard when she had her legal troubles, Ryan's response became a big focus for the media. At first, he seemed to back Blake's version of events, but rumors started circulating that after he saw the full text logs, he became more cautious about how he publicly supported her. The idea that Ryan might be pulling back echoed how some close associates in other public disputes went quiet once new details created a sense of uncertainty. Neither Blake nor Ryan confirmed any of this, but folks noticed that he appeared a lot less in connection to her projects after the fallout with Justin was made public. During this time, Justin continued to emphasize respectful behavior on set, especially regarding postpartum concerns. The unedited texts in which he checked in on Blake's ability to perform certain stunts seemed more like genuine concern for her rather than a dismissive attitude. It reminded people of how in other Hollywood scandals, including Amber Heard's, when you see the fuller story, it can flip your initial impression upside down. By sticking to a calm, factual approach, showing detailed records, refuting claims point by point, Justin ended up looking more credible, much like those who, in Heard's case, compiled evidence to show that certain allegations were taken out of context or only partially true.
Oh, it's so hard. I mean, look, first of all, being a director is a very lonely job and there's a lot of pressure. And I think the only way that I got through it is I just surrounded myself with people that were so much smarter than me. As it relates to the acting part, it's a heavy load to carry. I wanted to do as much justice as I could to survivors by making Ryle as truthful as possible.
Then there was the situation involving producer Jamie Heath and a private video he had shown. He explained that it was to illustrate the emotional spectrum of childbirth and that he had given Blake a heads up, asking if she was comfortable seeing it. But later, Blake described it as if she had been caught off guard and very disturbed by it. The way these accounts differed so drastically was similar to moments in the Amber Heard drama, where events were portrayed in such opposite ways that the public had no idea what the truth really was. By the time Jamie's side of the story came out, more and more people began doubting Blake's version of events. A pattern was forming. From how Justin supposedly came into her trailer to the postpartum discussion and now the shared video, everything had multiple perspectives. And the more raw evidence emerged, the shakier Blake's claims appeared. Still, the biggest bombshell in the whole situation remained that Blake's attorney had withdrawn. Hollywood insiders love pointing out how rarely you see such a well-known lawyer come out and say, "I can't support my client's claims anymore." In a broader sense, this echoed the unpredictable roller coaster that hung around Amber Heard's disputes. As soon as a key person in your circle starts backing away, it shifts the focus from whether the other side might be lying to whether your own side is actually built on shaky ground. And for the public, that's a game changer. Even diehard fans of Blake had to grapple with the fact that a top-tier lawyer felt compelled to speak out publicly against her. That was enough to shatter a lot of people's confidence in her story. As a result, film studios and producers became more cautious. Just like when Amber Heard's problems started escalating and certain opportunities dried up, you can see a similar freeze happening around Blake. Discussions about future roles are on hold because production teams don't want to deal with a star who might bring drama behind the scenes. The parallels to Amber Heard's situation really stand out here, considering how quickly a single conflict can spiral and make everyone, right down to makeup artists and top executives, hesitant to be involved. And there's another worry. If even part of the talk about manipulative texts and threats is true, then people wonder if working with Blake might put them at risk, if they ever get on her bad side. Still, many of Blake's fans point out that Hollywood is known for being tough on women, and they argue the reality could be more complicated. When the Amber Heard accusations were swirling, a similar viewpoint was taken by her supporters, that the power dynamics in Hollywood can muddy the waters, and it's hard to know who's truly in the wrong. But as time went on, all the conflicting evidence did a lot of damage to Heard's credibility, and the same pattern seems to be taking shape for Blake. That doesn't mean everyone has fully turned on her or Amber. Both still have devoted fans, but there's a large cloud of uncertainty.
A lot of it's my real life clothes or my husband's clothes or my girlfriend Gigi's clothes. I was borrowing some.
Wait, that's kind of amazing. So you have something of Gigi's in the movie.
Yeah, it's like a wedding, like something old, something borrowed, something blue, something new.
Wait, which
except
one?
it's just,
Now I want to think of the scene.
Oh, I'm wearing her stuff all over it.
Oh, really?
And tons of like Bodhi, which is with the suit now that I'm wearing is Bodhi. It was meant for my husband, but I borrowed it.
His suit?
It was meant for him to wear, but it's so pretty. Look at it. You guys are not getting it in the shot.
And in an industry that thrives on image, that uncertainty naturally affects your career. At this point, it's anyone's guess how Blake will respond. Amber Heard's story played out over multiple legal moves, different public appearances, and shifting attitudes. Blake might choose a similar path. Maybe she'll give a big TV interview, apologize, or insist this whole mess was due to bad advice. But that's a tightrope walk. If she flat out denies everything, the mountain of contradictory evidence could overshadow her attempts to fix her reputation. If she says she exaggerated some points but blames other people, she could get even more negative press. The key challenge, just like it was in Heard's case, is figuring out how to regain control of your image once the public has watched so many conflicting pieces of information spill out. From Justin's perspective, it's a lot like the people who were on the other side of Amber Heard's battles. He's playing it calmly, putting facts front and center, and it seems to be working. Every time more texts or production testimony come out, it bolsters the idea that he was unfairly targeted. Now you even see some people who initially thought Justin was the villain admitting the evidence is stacked in his favor. Obviously, we might never know the full truth about every conversation and behind-the-scenes fight, but Justin's approach of consistent, measured disclosure reminds us of how receipts in other high-profile Hollywood feuds have turned the tide against the one making the accusations. Meanwhile, the entertainment world has a long memory for these sorts of dramatic blow-ups, and social media has already dubbed Blake's situation as a repeat of the Amber Heard fiasco. In both cases, you have a star who was once praised for talent and likability, only to end up overshadowed by a personal controversy. In each scenario, lawyers played huge roles. Private messages were dissected line by line, and the public's empathy swung back and forth whenever some new tidbit surfaced. The digital world amplifies these swings even more, with trending hashtags and endless online threads pouring over every detail, no matter how small or unconfirmed. Of course, there are key differences between Amber Heard's and Blake Lively's specific conflicts. The people involved, the details, the exact timeline, but the overall shape of the controversy is similar enough that fans of both can't help but notice. Supporters of each actress might be torn between thinking the media is unfairly targeting these women and believing that maybe these actresses stirred the pot themselves. Then there are friends and former coworkers caught in the middle. Do they stay quiet and avoid the blowback? Or do they speak out and risk angering someone who wields a lot of influence? Right now, nobody can say for sure how Blake's situation will play out. Amber Heard's path was long and winding, and it took multiple rounds of legal battles and evolving public opinions before anything felt resolved. It's possible Blake might try something similar, maybe a heartfelt interview or a carefully orchestrated PR strategy. Then again, there's a chance more evidence will come out and shift the narrative even further.
I was like making like, I don't know, juice with like, there was this like maple water on set and I was like, oh, water tapped from a maple tree. This is exciting. But instead of just like handing him a plastic red cup that I was drinking out of, I like went and got the martini glass, a crystal glass, and like shook it up for him properly because you can't hand that man a red cup.
No.
Like, and so he's like standing on a dock with like mud around and he's holding a crystal martini glass. It was just juice and maple water.
We just don't know yet. The biggest lesson from the Heard situation, and now from Blake's, is that a star's reputation, no matter how strong it seems, can unravel really fast once contradictory evidence hits the internet. This shock was evident for those who watched Amber Heard's situation, which got way more complicated when new information spilled into the spotlight. In that sense, Blake's current nightmare is a perfect illustration of how these types of controversies blow up in modern Hollywood. The lawyer quitting is going to be a point of discussion for years in legal circles. The various texts, interviews, and behind-the-scenes accounts will probably become a cautionary tale for any actor who might think they can say one thing privately and expect it never to surface publicly. Just like in Amber Heard's reality, Blake's ordeal shows how tough it is to maintain a consistent story once lawyers and the media start digging up every detail. For now, the drama continues, and everyone, from commentators to everyday fans to industry insiders, is trying to guess what'll happen next. Will Blake and Justin patch things up so she can salvage her career? Will new information come to light and spark an even deeper investigation into her role in this mess? Or will she take a break from the public eye, hoping the drama dies down on its own? Nobody really knows, but no matter how it all wraps up, the comparisons to Amber Heard stand out loud and clear. Both stories show what can happen when a typical Hollywood conflict explodes into a massive public feud, leaving many people, including longtime supporters, scratching their heads over who to believe and how they missed the warning signs. In the end, these are the wild parallels between Amber Heard and Blake Lively, two accomplished actresses who built successful Hollywood careers but ended up in high-stakes showdowns with tons of eyes watching their every move. Each story highlights how tricky it is to balance a carefully maintained public persona with the sometimes messy behind-the-scenes truth. The big question is whether the lessons learned from Amber's case could help Blake find a calmer resolution, or if Hollywood is just doomed to watch this kind of drama repeat whenever personal arguments go public. If the gossip machine keeps spinning at the same speed, we'll probably find out soon. And for everyone who's been following these unexpected twists, the similarities are pretty hard to miss. Both situations are proof that even a rock-solid reputation can unravel in no time once leaked messages and testimony paint a very different picture of what's really going on.